let's go to Germany first. Thomas Sparrow is political correspondent with our partners DW. He's joining us, connecting all the way from Germany to give us an update of the European update there. Hello, Thomas.
Hello, Gifty. Nice to talk to you. This time not from home, as we've been doing in the last few days, but from our political studios here in central Berlin to give you the update of how the coronavirus situation is here in Europe. The situation still remains very difficult across the continent, and one of the big questions that has been asked in recent days is how big European solidarity will be in times of crisis, how European countries will be able to manage to get together and tackle this crisis, because this is a crisis that has affected in different ways, but it has affected all countries in the European Union.
Well, talking about the European Union and how it is dealing with this, how has the Union itself supported particularly Italy and Spain, Italy, which has become an epicenter? How have they been able to support these countries that have been under immense pressure, because we learned that China has had to send in some help?
There are different ways of looking at this. There are bilateral ways in which, for example, Germany has been able to help Italy. For example, patients from Italy have been flown to Germany. Germany has more capacity to deal with some of the patients that are being flown in. There are more beds, for example, here. That's one element that shows you how solidarity might be working on a bilateral level that happens between other countries as well. That there's a wider the wider problem or the wider issue of European solidarity. There are different ways that European leaders have been discussing how they could help the countries that are most affected, whether it is using an already established mechanism, whether it is using something called the corona bonds, which some countries, including Germany, are against. There are other aspects as well that have been discussed on how the European Union can actually carry out this idea of European solidarity. For now, Gifty, it's fair to say that the coronavirus could provide Europe with a very big opportunity to precisely try and show how this union of countries work, but at the same time it is revealing its weaknesses, and it is showing how difficult it can be to carry out this solidarity when you have such a big crisis and so many countries affected.
Let's bring it home to Germany. We know that Chancellor Angela Merkel has tested negative. Is there any update from that side of town before we move on to general Germany?
She has tested negative, that's correct, and today she managed to leave her isolation. She had been in isolation for around 2 weeks. It was a preventive isolation after she had had contact with a doctor who tested positive. Angela Merkel had then 3 tests, and all 3 tests came out negative. So she announced today that she would again leave that isolation and work from the Chancellery. In the 2 weeks where she was in isolation, she still continued to rule and to govern here in Germany, but she did that mostly in a remote way. So taking part, for example, remotely on conferences or cabinet meetings. Now she will be able to go again to the Chancellery, and as such, this comes at an important time here in Germany.
Looks like we've lost Thomas there, but Thomas Sparrow is political correspondent with our partners DW. He joined us all the way from Berlin with update. He was just telling us about the European Union and the decisions that have been taken there to support countries within the European Union that have been affected by coronavirus. He was giving us an update on Angela Merkel, who had to be quarantined after she came into contact with her doctor, who tested positive after she gave her some vaccinations. He was also telling us that is the situation right now. We will try and get back to Thomas if possible, but we'll also try to give you the world outlook of coronavirus. Thomas is back on with me. Hello, Thomas. We lost you briefly.
Sorry that we lost each other. I was actually telling you about Angela Merkel testing negative and how she's now back in action working from the Chancellery, and that comes at an important time for Germany, because although there are some signs of hope that the measures are actually working here in the country, they're still very much in place. They will be in place until at least the 19th of April.
Well, Thomas, let's come to Germany before we call it a wrap. Now, I'm seeing very interestingly, these are certainly what I'm seeing in the background is certainly what Germany looks like right now. But this is happens to be a very busy tourist attraction, a very busy place right now. What is the general mood in Germany?
I've been walking around a bit now that I'm in central Berlin, around some of the most important sites here in the city, and they're practically empty. And this is not something unusual for Germany. In fact, it is something that's happening also in many other parts around the world. The biggest tourist sites, the sites that are normally full of people from around the world, now empty because of all the restrictions put in place. And by the way, these are restrictions that are affecting many countries and their bilateral relations as well. Germany has put in practice a big plan, a very big plan, not the only country to do so, but it is a big plan here in Germany to try and bring back some of the tourists that have been stranded in other parts of the world. And Germany has now been able to bring back nearly 200,000 of its citizens from basically more than 40 countries, around 50 countries. And this is something that has been very important in the last few days that the European Union will also be working on. But that just gives you an idea of why not only European cities like Berlin just behind me or other cities around the world are simply empty now, because tourism in particular is something that has been badly affected, because authorities have been telling people to stay at home because that is the biggest way in which we can actually fight and combat coronavirus at these times.
It's good to see that you've been able to leave your home today and head towards the office. Thomas, thank you. Thomas Sparrow is political correspondent with our partners DW.